Well, to look at tomorrow's cabinet swearing in, I'm joined now by three members of the Parliamentary Press Gallery. Bob Fife is the Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail. Catherine Lévesque is a political reporter with La Presse Canadienne. And Bruce Campion-Smith is Parliamentary reporter for the Toronto Star. All three of you, thanks and welcome to the show.
Thanks for inviting us.
Okay, as we speak, we are getting more and more confirmation or news of the different cabinet positions which are now starting to trickle in. And obviously the big news is news of, and it's all yet to be confirmed. This is the one proviso that we say before we say anything further, but it's to be confirmed. But we're getting news of a new Foreign Affairs Minister, Bob. Chrystia Freeland will be replaced.
Yeah, by Philippe Francois Champagne, who is the Infrastructure Minister. Before that, he was International Trade. Mr. Champagne is a protege of Jean Chrétien. He is an international lawyer. He's lived all over the world, in London and Switzerland, where he helped run some major companies or was working for them. And he's a really, really good choice. It gives Quebec a real spotlight at the cabinet table. But he has some major challenges because we have an unpredictable president, and we have to get the free trade agreement through. We have to deal with a president that nobody knows what he's going to do at any moment. We have major challenges with China, and how do we get that relationship back on board? We have to deal with the whole issue of climate change and also how do we work through multilateral organizations in Europe. So he's got a lot on his plate.
Okay, we're going to drill through down. I mean, it's really interesting because each position has repercussions, and who do you replace that with? But let's go to other things that are now being reported out of Quebec. Catherine, there is a confirmation, or there are reports of two ministers from Quebec, Pablo Rodriguez and the newly elected MP for Laurier-Sainte-Marie, which is Stephen Guilbeault, Quebec's most prominent environmentalist. We're being told what two positions they're going to have.
Exactly. Well, Guilbeault, it's pretty much confirmed now that he's going to be at the Heritage File, which is quite surprising. A lot of people saw him as the Environment Minister, but of course that would have sent a strange message to the West because let's just remember that Guilbeault is opposed to Trans Mountain, so that would have definitely been problematic. So a surprising choice. I know some environmentalists in Quebec are quite disappointed with this choice, but also Pablo Rodriguez. He is, very good chances he is going to be the House Leader. Yeah. So he's perfectly bilingual. He has he will be able to deal with the different parties in a minority government, and especially the Bloc Québécois, right? Because they have a lot more MPs right now. So I think in that sense, it's interesting to see that more and more, Quebec MPs have more roles right now, and they're getting promotions. I'm also hearing that Mélanie Joly is also going to have a promotion. So we'll see what her role will be. But definitely, I think the Prime Minister thinks that she's done a good job in the past few months after whatever happened with Netflix. So we'll have to see that.
And I'm going to preface everything we say once again by this all bears confirmation tomorrow at 1:30 Eastern Time. We will confirm this. Check against delivery is often what they say in speeches. But yeah, it also poses a question though. We still don't know where Chrystia Freeland will be going. Bruce, there's a lot of speculation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I don't know. There was talk at one point, does she go to finance? I don't think she will, but she's certainly she performed strongly in foreign affairs. She's a trusted minister. There was even speculation, at one point early on that she may stay. She may have kept on the foreign affairs file just to see NAFTA, over the finish line. So I'll be very interested to see where she lands, and there's any multitude of possibilities, and that's actually the interesting thing to watch is how all this comes together. Yeah. He's got a blend of veterans like Bill Morneau, and there's talk that he's going to stay in finance. And then you got some new talent come in, some impressive people like Mr. Guilbeault, and there's does Adam Van Koeverden from Milton, does he find a place? Perhaps it may not be at the cabinet table, but of course there's also the parliamentary secretaries.
The question too, or one thing that is being discussed and will be discussed until tomorrow, until we have an official announcement, is whether they will sweeten the pot for Chrystia Freeland, because in giving up in protocol, in the world of protocol, foreign affairs is one of the senior positions, but in giving that up would she, for example, be offered, there was scuttlebutt around, a position of Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Trudeau has not had a Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Harper didn't have a Deputy Prime Minister. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, look, she is one of the real stars in that cabinet and a very strong performer. And she's just not going to take a job unless she has some real authority, because it would be a diminution of what she's already been doing in global affairs. There had been talk early on, about a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago, maybe they'd move her into intergovernmental affairs, and she would have some, and she would be able to work with in terms of dealing with regional alienation. And perhaps they could make her deputy prime minister as well. But my sense is that she might want something more than that. That's why I'm beginning to think in innovation, which is the old industry department, would be a good fit for her, because underneath these, they have all these regional development agencies that come under, and they could, even if they had ministers of state under them, they would report to her, and this would give her a real role in trying to deal with regional alienation, because they develop programs that help them, but also the urban-rural divide. So I think is a real possibility.
During the campaign, the Tories in Quebec, the Conservatives in Atlantic Canada were all criticizing the fact that the regional development agencies have all been centralized under Innovation Canada, run out of a Scarborough minister or a Mississauga minister, Navdeep Bains. We still haven't mentioned the fact that there are reports out, rumors out, that John Wilkinson from BC, from the Vancouver area, would be the new environment minister, thus posing the question, what will happen to, or what portfolio would Catherine McKenna take up? Anyone hearing anything on that? It's largely speculation.
If you're happy to hear there's speculation, it might be maybe infrastructure, you know, and that would give her still a bit of a green focus, because of course a lot of the money for the green economy will flow, public transit will flow through there. You know, Wilkinson's an interesting choice. He's certainly, again, a trusted, low-key figure. He would bring perhaps a lower profile to environment than Ms. McKenna did, and he sends a different signal than if you had put Mr. Guilbeault in, you know, and of course they're also trying to balance, you know, they've said that climate change is going to be one of their priorities for this new government, but at the same time they have to avoid furthering kind of that alienation of the West. So
he's from the West, right?
Saskatchewan, and he's got a background in clean tech, so you could say that he might bridge those two
and
worlds.
fluently bilingual.
Bilingual. It's interesting because as a Vancouver MP, he's often had to support or had to defend on panels, for example, the Trans Mountain Pipeline, and yet his constituency, many of them around in that area, were against it. He also served time as an environmental advisor to the Saskatchewan government.
Well, somebody has to defend the Trans
Mountain
Pipeline.
This government
spent $4.5 billion on this pipeline. So let's hope there's a voice that says, you know, Alberta needs to get its oil to world markets so it can get world price. I think it makes good sense.
Catherine, you meant anything else you're watching for? I mean, you also mentioned the importance of Pablo Rodriguez being bilingual and being the new House leader. If it's confirmed, he would have a major role to play in a minority parliament.
Yeah, absolutely, because in a minority government, while he will be the one responsible to make sure that all the legislation passes and, you know, that the House is in order. So of course he's going to have a big role. And it was interesting because in the caucus a few weeks ago, he said, well, Quebec is going to have a voice at the table. However, you know, all these reports we're hearing about promotions for Quebec ministers, what is interesting is that it hides the fact that the PM does not want a Quebec lieutenant. He has said no, again, to be confirmed, because, you know, there's nothing official yet, but he's definitely not inclined to name one. So he's kind of making up for that. And, you know, Pablo Rodriguez will be one of his important MPs we will see him very often in a minority government.
He does have a temper, and he has to be careful with that, because in negotiating with the House leaders on legislation, you've got to be able to have a good relationship with these people, and you also have to be able to know when they're trying to pull a fast one on you. But in a minority government, you can get legislation really screwed up in the House, and then you have problems with committees and investigations as well.
I'm going to throw a curve out at you, but it's just because it's something that's come to my mind, and that's the way my mind works. But there is an increasing discussion about the possibility of this Parliament coming back before December the 5th because of the strike affecting CN Rail. 170,000 barrels of oil a day, which is already being affected by that strike. We're watching for that. What do you think? I mean, Patty Hajdu, the Labour Minister, as of now, has said that, you know, they are trying to get the parties together to discuss things, but this is the Western economy, again, being affected.
Yeah, but it's a little early, I think, to bring back Parliament.
We've already seen, the strike started today. We've already seen some calls, you know, on the government, you know, to have Parliament ready to come back. I agree with Bob. It's probably a bit early. You know, I think they'll want to try and see if the the negotiation, if they get a negotiated settlement, you don't want to short circuit that too quickly. But clearly, it's a concern, and it's also from an optics standpoint. What kind of the government doesn't want to be seen to be kind of a deaf ear on these Western issues.
Okay, so last point. Anything else that you're watching for? Any big
Well,
question
any of the
marks?
mistakes that we made in our predictions, we'll blame on you.
Exactly, for pressing your hand. Catherine, anyone, question marks in ministers you still wondering about their fate, where they go? Bardish Jagger, for example, the House leader. Well, one question is where will she go?
Yeah, does Harjit Sajjan move? He had a very long tenure at Defense, and does a new Defense Minister then set in motion, a new Chief of Defense Staff who's also had a very long tenure, General Vance.
What about public safety? A huge post. Ralph Goodall's gone. Who's going to take that job?
Yeah.
National revenue. I know nobody talks about
Madame
it because
Leboutier.
Madame Leboutier does not speak English, so she wasn't interviewed a lot. But definitely we'll be watching out for her as well.
And the question mark is sort of how they deal with the Western representation, because of course they don't have MPs from Alberta, Saskatchewan. Jim Carr had been tapped for a potential role, but he's got health issues. Maybe he's not at the cabinet table, but maybe he's made a special, rapporteur for.
Well, I'd watch for Mike McLeod, the Liberal MP from Northwest Territories, a former transport minister in the Northwest Territories government. He could be given a cabinet position, and it would be very hard for Jason Kenney or Scott Moe to say, well, he's not a Westerner.
Right, Catherine?
And lastly, I was looking at the list of new MPs and didn't realize Marie-France Lalonde had been named, and she was actually elected. And I'm wondering if she's going to be maybe named Minister of Francophone Affairs and have to deal with Carolyn Maroney and the Ford government. We'll see.
I think it's Monaforte.
Okay, well, this is all interesting. Well, but committee chairs are going to be important too. We didn't even have time to talk about that, but committee chairs in this parliament are going to be crucial as well. We will keep the tape, as Bob says, and if any mistakes or miscalls, we will just
destroy it.
It's your fault.
Thanks for coming in and going out on a limb. Thanks for speaking with us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.